Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Digital Twin Week. My name is Adam Beck. I'm Executive Director of the Smart Cities Council for Australia and New Zealand, and it's been a delight to host a number of sessions throughout the week, talking, discovering, networking, and engaging in everything digital twin. For those coming back for yet another session, welcome. For our newcomers for the first time, you've missed out on a couple of great days, but all our recordings are up on the Digital Twin Hub, so please make sure you go there to sort of catch up on some of the conversations that we've had. But this afternoon, really delighted to have this session underway with our co-host, the Water Services Association of Australia, and Greg and the team, who have pulled together a great panel. And we're going to discuss everything enhancing digital outcomes through optimized data sharing. A bit of a mouthful, but we've got some great projects to pull that topic apart. Just a few notes before we kick off. As I mentioned, it's been a busy week so far. We've still got another session later this afternoon, and then our big workshop tomorrow, really getting our hands a little bit more dirty in helping shape a digital twin strategy for the region. If you head to digitaltwinweek.com, you'll be able to register for any of those remaining sessions that we have up there. Some housekeeping, we'd love to get some questions through. Greg will be directing traffic a little bit later on with the panel session, so please use the question function to share those questions with the panel. And for those that want to go back and have a look at this recording when it's available, or indeed share it with your peers, your colleagues, you can do so. You can either go to our YouTube channel, Smart Cities Council Australia, New Zealand. We have a Digital Twin TV playlist in there where there's a whole range of videos, not just from Digital Twin Week. Or indeed, you can head to the Digital Twin Hub. Not only will you find the recordings there in the news section, you'll also find a whole range of other resources, articles, and all things digital twin goodness. So just head to digitaltwinhub.org to get all your digital twin needs, and subscribe to our regular update as well. Coming in 2021, March 2021, we will launch the Digital Twin Challenge. Yesterday, we revealed that we're taking registrations of interest for this challenge. We're going to be selecting 5 local councils, cities, and 5 state, territory, regional agencies to work with us for a year or two. We're wanting to get a good diversity of use cases, infrastructure projects, organisation-wide interests in digital twin. And if you head to the hub, you'll find a page there with a little bit more information. We encourage you to check that out. So registrations of interest are open right now. So to our panel, we have a great panel of guests today. Greg's going to take over in a moment, but I wanted to welcome Shane and Hashan and Ben and Robert. Really looking forward to this one. I'm going to fade off into the background, Greg, and let you take controls. I'll be here, but look forward to coming back a little bit later on. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Adam. We're very happy to be here as part of Digital Twin Week. Today, my name's Greg Ryan from the Water Services Association of Australia. I'm Director of Business Excellence there. And we're going to talk about data sharing, and how that underpins the digital twin. The sequence today, I'm going to give a broad overview of the water sector, why are we interested in this space, and what's really driving us to move towards the digital twin. I'm then going to hand over to Shane, who's going to talk a bit about Sydney Water's direction and how they're embracing the digital engineering framework and what's that doing to underpin their digital twin journey. And then we're going to talk about some practical real-world experience through the level crossing removal project down in Victoria. So we've got Ben Fox and Robert Theodore, who are going to talk through what their experience has been, some of the lessons learned, and some of the key aspects about building data trust between organisations. And then we're going to move into a bit about, well, what is the structure of that data, and how do we use appropriate nomenclature standards so that we can share effectively? So we've got Hashan Samara Wikrama, who's the manager at the Virtual Business Building Information Systems Australia, to talk through how their approach complements Uniclass and how it's different and what its effect is likely to be. So that's the direction we're going to take. I'll pop a few questions. There's a couple of surveys in there as well. So if you have a look in the chat, I've got the link to the Poll Everywhere survey monkey. And so if you enter that into your phone, you'll be able to participate in the survey as I bring them up. They're not there yet, but just start entering that into your phone over the next couple of talks. And then we'll, after the presentations, we'll get into the discussion panel. So Water Services Association of Australia is the peak body for urban water and sewer providers. So pretty well all water and sewage businesses with greater than 25,000 property connections are our member. We've got over 100 members. We also include a number of private utilities and a couple of consultants and key stakeholders. So why are we interested in the digital twin space and going digital? Well, there's three key drivers for the sector at the moment that are really pushing us in this direction. First one's water security, and you'll all be aware from the recent droughts and water shortages, particularly on the eastern seaboard, that water security is a major driver and pressure for water businesses. We don't want to see water restrictions. We want to see water available for productivity, and it's about how do we enable that in the most cost-effective manner. Diversification of water sources to provide greater city resilience comes at a cost, and so there's impacts on water affordability. That's been exacerbated by COVID and the impacts that we're seeing with increase in hardship. That's expected to accelerate as we see the JobKeeper drop off in the early next year. So we've got some significant pressures in that sphere. In addition, we believe there's a need to look at city design and city shaping differently, more with potentially a water-centric, but more green design because of the health and mental well-being benefits that have come through and been emphasised again by COVID. In terms of water security, we've seen the Millennium Drought, and now just recently since 2018, probably a short drought, but a very sharp drought. We've seen water storages drop at unprecedented levels. Within the 9 months towards the end of 2019, Sydney saw its storages drop by the same levels we saw in 3 years in the Millennium Drought. So we're seeing more severe weather events, more dramatic droughts. That was in the 2018 floods would impact water storages and our ability to deliver safe and resilient water supplies. So we need to improve how we develop our resilience by considering all aspects of the water cycle. So all water options for the water supply should be on the table, including stormwater and wastewater reuse. If we also then looked at prices, because of the Millennium Drought, we saw an increase in prices over the last 15 years, not out of step with the electricity sector, but driven by the need to install desalination plants and the like. So that has put upward pressure on customer affordability. That's compounded by impacts from COVID. We're seeing slight increases now, but expecting to see significant increases in hardship as we go forward into the next year. That means we've got to become more efficient, more effective at what we're doing. And we're seeing digital and potentially digital twin as one of the key areas that we need to embrace to move forward into this area. The other aspect is about city design and city shaping. And the current design of cities and urban sprawl is, we'd argue, not sustainable and doesn't have this positive health impacts that you can see from the more green, more open space design. So Water Services Association is leading the charge, but as a sector, we want to really unlock the full value of water. So for the environment and for the community, we want to look at better green spaces, better use of waterways and cleaner waterways. We want to move beyond the traditional water and wastewater services. And to do that, we need to collaborate. We need to work more effectively together, and we need to be sharing information in a way that we haven't done before. And again, how do we accelerate that, and how do we move into this digital world, which we believe is the future direction? Why do we want to do this? Because green space alone reduces, by just having tree canopy, reduces stress and psychological distress by up to 31%. Having clean water in beaches improves the value of real estate and the value associated with those. In Sydney, $137 million a year is the estimated value. There's of course benefits associated with safe drinking water. And we're now starting to quantify the livability associated benefits with green space and urban recreation areas. So the significant impacts per person there. How do we embrace that and how do we deliver that more effectively? To do that, we need to move forward into the digital space. We've done some surveys across the water sector over the last couple of years. Our maturity is improving, but we're starting at, I suppose, the low to low medium level of maturity. And so we need to build on that. We're not alone, and there has been a lot of work done in this space, so we can build on the shoulders of others to accelerate our program. The key is to establish strong foundations. So we need a strategy, not just trial and pilot studies, but also a fully knit cross-business strategy that unifies the direction in digital and including digital twin. To enable that, we need to be talking a common language, and we need to be being able to have a narrative that embraces not just the technical people, but also the customer service and all walks through the organization. We need to stop talking IT, OT, IoT, and SCADA. We need to talk about what is the outcome we're trying to drive and how do we drive it. So we've been working with the private sector through the Internet of Things Alliance Australia to develop up this framework, which will be released next month. The focus of today is about data and data structures. We've got to have consistent definitions and agreed definitions so we can actually talk across sectors effectively. And then if we can talk, we need to be able to trust what we're getting and how we're sharing. So we need to have good data integrity. And then of course, it's got to be secure. That will enable us to provide a strong foundation for the mid to long term. We want to move into BIM. So having consistent 3 and 14 models that we can use and share, and then move into the digital twin space where we're starting to optimize our decision making, not just for operations and maintenance, but also long-term design and integration with council and other planning agencies. We've started on the use of automation and artificial intelligence, primarily in call centers. We want to move from that to automation and artificial intelligence use in our asset design and asset operation. That's a ways off, but that's the direction we want to head in based on strong foundations. To do this, we can't do it alone. We're forming partnerships with a range of organisations. The ones in blue here are the key ones that are relevant to this discussion, but we recognise that we need strong partners, and using those partners, we can build on the good work that they're doing, share back, and together lift the entire sector and other sectors. So we've engaged strongly with BIM4Water in the UK. We've just got permission in the last couple of weeks to mirror their structure. So we're starting with the WICS group, the Water Industry Classification, Hierarchy and Standardization group. So they're working on Uniclass. We want to try and introduce VBIS into that because we believe it's got a alternate dimension or a bit more depth to it. So we're working through with those guys. And if anyone is interested in working with us, we need some private sector involvement. By all means, please drop me an email or LinkedIn. Be very happy to get in touch. We're working with VBIS and Uniclass to try and develop up a strong nomenclature for the water sector that is transferable and shareable across sectors. So that's the key, a really quick whistle-stop tour of the key drivers for the industry and what we're doing and where we're heading into the digital space and the digital twin space. I'll now hand over to Shane Reilly. He's the Digital Engineering Manager at Sydney Water. I'll just see if I can stop sharing the screen. And then, yeah, so Shane is over 25 experience in delivering digital information based on approaches to enable more productive methods of planning, designing, constructing, operating, and maintaining water assets. He's passionate about the digital way of working that unlocks value and efficiency for all stages of project life cycles. I'll hand over to you, Shane.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so today, thanks again, Greg, for inviting me today to talk to the people here about digital engineering and I guess how digital engineering connects to a lot of the stuff that you just spoke to, Greg. So I'll be speaking today about my role within Sydney Water, the Sydney Water approach to digital engineering in general, and some of the core elements that I think Greg just touched on then as well. Sydney Water standardisation, so what we're doing in that piece, mainly around capital delivery at the moment, and also traditional versus future delivery states. So how are we delivering now, and what do we see delivery looking like in the future, maybe in that more connected environment. I'll also just touch on what Greg also mentioned, which is how we're actually connecting to the wider industry, so we're not just doing this alone. Okay, so my role is to help develop a digital engineering framework and approach on behalf of the organisation and executive team. So I guess the first thing to mention that it is a transformational role, and it is looking right across that asset lifecycle. So we haven't pigeonholed digital engineering into a certain sector. It really is looking at how our organisation is going to adopt digital engineering, how we're going to connect with the executive team, which is ultra important for that buy-in and sponsorship, and how we're going to deliver best value across the organisation. So it really is embedding digital engineering into the way we work across that life cycle, from the BIM process through to our digital operational environments, digital twins, connection to live data, and things like that. So my job is to build a team, and I'm starting to do that at the moment, and a framework. If I just touch briefly there on the structure within Sydney Water, so we're lucky enough to have delivery partners, 3 regional delivery consortiums, and a planning partner who are working with us for the next 10 years. So from a digital engineering point of view, we're working heavily on standardization with those guys at the moment, and also measuring their DE maturity across the full 10-year life cycle. So it's exciting stuff there. And then internally for Sydney Water, we're looking at what do our asset information modeling environments look like, and how's that changing the way our teams are working, and how does the digital operational sort of environment look like, and the connection to live data, and how's that improving the way we're working. So it's an exciting role that spans right across. I've also got to promote strong relationships with internal stakeholders. I've mentioned across the full life cycle, which will be a consistent theme across this presentation, because I think it's really important. And also technology groups and industry, example, WSAA. So it is also about promoting innovation and new solutions and better ways of working. So that there's a lot of structure to the approach, but then there's also the need to innovate as we go along, and actually show what we're doing in different ways. So I guess what we're doing at Sydney Water is we're using digital engineering to change the way we work. We're using digital engineering is helping the business transform. So I mentioned, my role is about producing a digital engineering framework on behalf of the organisation. So that's, at the moment, we've got a draft framework in play. And that document, is describing, where it is we want to go and how we want to get there. I guess a really important point to mention right now is that I can't get there without the help of the organisation and the buy-in of the organisation and the experts that live within the organisation. So there's actually a connected piece of work happening right now, looking right across that life cycle as we look to get the digital engineering framework out of its draft form and into action. There's engagement with the business on what does a digital twin look like for planning teams? What does it look like for design, build, operate, maintain? What do those connected data environments look like, and how are they helping us achieve what it is we want to achieve? What do we want to achieve? So it's very much a company-wide view that we're getting at the moment, and perspective on that, so that my implementation will enable the production of a digital twin that will help the organisation get to where it wants to be, and then also contribute to the broader smart cities approach and future-proof, Sydney Water's future, and create opportunity in that space as well. So I'll just switch it around a little bit now and talk about, I guess, what I believe is the most, the core aspect of digital engineering and digital transformation, which is data. So I guess when you think about business transformation in the past, it's people, it's processes, it's technology. I like to think of digital transformation of the data being the center point and the focal point for that. So when we look to transform, we're looking at what we're producing and how we're producing it, and how that information is actually benefiting future stages of the project and asset lifecycle. When we are changing, I mentioned the connection and collaboration to wider groups. The connection to vendors is also important, but Greg mentioned in his opening the common language, and I think that's really important to look at asset classification and tagging, and how are we going to talk not only within the Sydney Water space and all our groups, but also outside of Sydney Water. And how does that enable us to work better? How does that enable us to work better with vendors? How does that enable us to leverage best practice into our organisation? And how does that enable us to work on that broader smart cities piece as well? So I'll just wind it back a little bit here, I guess, connecting digital engineering to the data side of things. So I've got a fairly generic explanation of digital engineering there, being a collaborative way of working and more productive methods of planning, designing, and operating, managing our assets than what was traditionally used. I just want to bring up the fact too that digital engineering does depend on consistent, reliable data and information that is managed as an asset right through the project lifecycle, or asset lifecycle. So it is really important and fundamental to definitely my approach and the Sydney Water approach, that we do look at that full asset lifecycle and how we can actually get that information to be of most value right through. So I've just written a couple of must-haves there from our perspective, which is full life cycle data classification and referencing, a place to collect, manage and share information, so a common data environment, data governance and information management. So that's in the form of standards, as it's also in the form of roles in the business. So roles will change and information will become, I guess, much more of an asset than it previously was. And the level of trust, I guess, needs to go up in terms of taking on information from a previous life cycle stage. I mentioned briefly the framework that was produced. So we are connecting this to strategy as well. So we've got one strategy and that's it. The framework is built off the back of that. There's a lot of great things in that strategy that I've leveraged off into the framework, but something that we've been completing with our delivery partners over the last 6 or 8 months has been the production of a capital delivery standard. So the point with this, probably the biggest point to raise is, we're after information that's produced in a consistent way across all of our delivery partners and planning partner when it's delivered to Sydney Water. So it goes to that trust thing. We want to be able to trust the information that's coming to us, and then we want to be able to use the information for what it is that we want to do. So you can imagine, in my approach, I've got the delivery partners delivering, and we're going to be doing a lot of great stuff in terms of planning, designing, constructing, and they're also engaged in maintenance activities as well. And from a Sydney Water perspective, we want to be moving forward in conjunction with them, in terms of what we're doing with that asset data and what we're doing with that operational data. And a big part to this approach was to, I guess, not put a requirement in just because we could. A big part of this was to really make sure that when a requirement was going into the standard, which we in fact built together, it was being in there to deliver the most efficient outcome. And that this standard will be updated as Sydney Water's maturity increases as well. So just showing you, I guess, where we are and where we're trying to get to in a little diagram. At the moment, we do deliver in a bit of a segmented way. So we get drawings and we might get specifications and we perhaps get some models coming through. But some of those things are sort of they're in their little compartments, and teams are working in their little compartments as well. And I guess it's less connected than the future state that we can see, but they make their way into our asset information systems. And what we get is, I guess we end up working in a very similar way, and model data, BIM data is not really used past the handover stage. And what we really want to try and get to is a point where we've got connected data sets, we've got common language. The model is the center. So a big part of my approach is working on the digital representation of the physical asset, especially with the capital delivery teams as well, and pulling that information through. So once we start to connect this information, we've got the common language with our delivery partners. We're getting efficiencies during that capital delivery, and I've just mentioned a few things that we can do in that space at the moment, and a few things that we can connect to, but we'll make those real. What then is Sydney Water doing with that information? How are we building our asset information model? How are we changing the way our asset managers and facility managers work? And then how are we pulling that information through to operations and that connection to live data as well? So I guess just in closing for me, we are in a transformation process. We are looking for common language between not only our platforms, but what's happening out there in the industry. We can't do this alone, and we really want to do this with the industry. So what we have been doing is connecting in with WSAA and joining things like the Digital Asset Task Force, who reach out to organisations like BIM4Water, VBIS, look at the VDAS, and all the really great things that we can leverage off into our approach. So I'm really keen to keep that going, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Shane. If you've got any questions, pop them into the Q&A bubble you'll see just down the bottom of the photos there. And then, we'll get to them as soon as we get through the panelists. So, look forward to those. Now, I'll move forward into the level crossing removal project, and I'd just like to introduce Ben Fox and Robert Theodore. So Ben's Digital Solutions Research Advisor. He's had nearly 15 years experience in the digital area, encompassing CAD, BIM, GIS, reality capture, and digital engineering. He's founded and directed a market-leading company delivering development of BIM content solutions. He's also specialised in roles providing digital consulting services focused on scan to BIM, 3D printing, manufacturing, and 3D visualization. And Robert, the utility manager with LXRP, is an accomplished utilities manager with over 20 years experience in the construction industry, with a civil and telecommunications engineering background. He's applied his creative, outcome-driven approach to solving large and complex challenges on major infrastructure projects, and worked across utility services, rail, roads, water, and maritime. So I'll hand over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Greg. Bit of housekeeping. Can everyone see the screen? Does that come up? That's a thumbs up. Very good. And thanks for the opportunity. And also great, Shane, to hear from the operator side of what it's like to be bringing it all together digitally, because I think we are all on that same journey of that transition from what we used to do to what we should be doing to bring about those efficiencies in a tighter market. So with no further ado, we'll dig in today relative to the level crossings project and what the journey really that Robert and I have been on from the coalface of a design perspective. And maybe if I could just ask Greg and Rob to mute while you're not talking, because there's an echo, which I think could be on your side. So in terms of background on the project, to give you some context, the level crossing removal project has been running for around 5 years, got about 5 years to go, and we're removing 75 level crossings. So 75 actually quite large projects in isolation, but collectively they total around 15 billion or so. The interesting part of this project is it's being delivered by 5 separate alliances comprised of designers and contractors, etc. So each of those has their own way of working, their own digital strengths and growth areas. And then together as a client, we're trying to bring all that together into a program of works to deliver on time and budget across pretty much the whole of metropolitan Melbourne. So where do I sit in the equation? Well, I'm seconded across onto the client side within the LXRP research and development team, and I sit in the TA, the ACOM GHD joint venture. Now within the R&D team, to the credit of the CEO of LXRP, they saw that there's 75 opportunities to start to do it better and reduce inefficiencies in the industry. So hence why I'm in there looking at how digital can enable that step change And in order to focus our attention, we always look for the biggest opportunity. And that's where about 18 months ago, I met Rob and started to get a whole new perspective on utilities, water included, and the opportunity that sits before us. So Rob, it'd be great if you give us a bit of an insight to who you are and where you've come from.
Thanks, Ben. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, so Rob Theodore, I started with the level crossings about 4.5 years ago, looking for utilities across the board. The reason I joined LX was because of regional rail revival that happened between 2009 and 2015. Had some real issues with utilities, cost blowouts, delays. And we had to look at different ways of managing it from a government perspective and make sure we had the early planning. So I've got a team of specialists working under me where we'll look at the different disciplines, including water, gas, telecom, power. And we try to manage it from a relationship perspective and also from a strategic and planning perspective. Now, bumped into Ben about 18 months ago, and we started to look at how could we transform the way we do things from a paper-based way into more of a digital way, moving into the future, and how we could manage utilities and relocation and impact the utilities on major projects in a digital manner, so we can retain the information and also make better decisions moving forward. So that's in a nutshell. So I'll hand over back to you, Ben, to continue.
Thanks, Rob. I guess this presentation is really just to say straight up the journey that we've been on that started about 18 months ago. And I guess what we've uncovered, noting I'm not from a utilities perspective, I understand how digital can enable superior business outcomes, but Rob certainly knew from the coalface both of his current role, where he's basically becoming a more informed client and procurer and lubricating the wheels in the process of underground utilities management, particularly, which is complex on any job and a bit of a wild card. But also the fact that it's a journey into where's the industry gone and where is it currently and where is it heading. And then throughout this journey, if you look back in 2019, it was what's current state? What do our alliances have? What do we have? What does the industry do? And I think our key finding was that as a client, as the government, we are naturally, because we've got a lot of things to take care of, and often it's the private sector that leads the government sector, we don't have the same level of digital maturity. And I guess to Shane's point in the last presentation, we highly encourage not specifying requirements just for the sake of it, or copy paste, just do VBIS kind of scenario. But really getting in as a client, and myself with Rob and others, educating on the why behind it. And then during this journey, actually developing a product, which you're going to see, a proof of concept digital platform to start to create that model-based information approach, particularly focused on utilities, but even looking more broadly in that. And that's where this notion of the Utilities Hub 2.0 and this LX 3D Connect has come about. And now we're at the stage of actually looking towards operationalizing that across the program. So why do we focus on utilities? Well, I love a burning platform and a challenge that has consequences. To give you an idea, the underground utilities, of which most of you probably know, is that wild card. And for most projects, it's around 6 to 7% of project budget. So that's $1 billion consideration on our project over a decade. So it's worth some attention, because when you get it wrong, things do go sideways. Now, obviously, water doesn't tend to do that, although maybe sewers do, I don't know, in terms of the health issues of the people, but it's the cost as well, and the reputational damage and the community impact, with some cases in point on the left of huge cost blowouts across prior Australian projects, that through the use of quality data, reliable data presented in a way that people can actually understand consistently, can reduce that risk. So we kind of proposed, well, what if we could actually create something that helped to manage this and help to center it around a 3D model that everyone can relate to and get context on. So initially, I looked at Rob and his team's day-to-day operations. So on the left was unstructured, what do you do? And I think it was even a good process for them to start to actually map out what do they do as a business unit? Why do they exist? What do they wish they could do better? And what is day-to-day, which is green, what is yellow, which is wish we had time to, and red when it's reactive. And how can we then put user stories beneath that and look for where digital might come second to enable them to make more informed decisions and deliver more. So looking at where they came from in the journey, it was paper-based. It was, we called it Utilities Hub 1.0, a SharePoint site with workflows in it and other things that enabled both themselves to understand what was happening, but also facilitate the alliances as an informed client helping the procurement process to actually pre-procure and manage utilities. But it was within the systems of SharePoint and Word documents and emails, because that's the tools they had. And these assessments started from dial before you dig type information, which is great, but not necessarily hugely reliable because of how the system currently is, which we're all aware of, that level D, and it's indicatively here, which we'll come back to. And it's great to hear. I just want to put a shout out. It's good to see that Dial Before You Dig teaming up with Esri Australia to really start to prospectively lift their own game in terms of how they supply the data, but also potentially help the utilities companies along the way to give that central repository. But as we progress at a given site, we naturally have to verify utilities, particularly in and around this exact design location. And we go on a journey of gathering data that we don't have. However, even when we gather that data, I went to many a meeting and saw people draw on a whiteboard squiggly lines, and you start to see how things can get lost in translation, particularly if you've got more than just water. Shout out to the blue there. You've also got, say, power and others on the board. Mistakes can happen because we don't have this scenario. So the question is, why do we not have this scenario where we literally start from scratch with, say, a near map or an aerometrics flyover, and then we start getting the dial before you dig and then validating it and having a digital twin of our asset, with this one here being Toorak Road. So I guess one of the things that became quite apparent, if we come back to the dial before you dig dimension, this is Toorak Road. I don't know if you've driven under it yet. When I first looked at this site and pulled all of the existing utility information we can get our hands on into a GIS platform, I first of all found we had 14 different utility owners, water being amongst that. And when I started to extrapolate that across our program, that could be like 30 plus. But the information from the 14 utility owners was 77 layers and 584 unique ways of saying perhaps around 36 things. So all of a sudden, from a database, data consistency and ability to dashboard measure that, it gets tricky, let alone the quality level and the amount of authenticity we can put on that data because of how our current supply chain and procurement processes are set up. So what we did was noted that there were initiatives like Uniclass and Omniclass Digital, different working groups to put together parameter potentials that will standardize it. We couldn't wait around. So we created a hybrid with the supply chain. So that's including the guys out on site, the verifiers, the contractors, the designers, and said, do you agree with this? And co-collaborated on creating these 36 unique parameters made up of the Australian standard we have currently for underground utilities, the LXRP specific information we need to be able to gain insight and measure, and also the GIS requirements. We then, in a proof of concept, baked those into looking at existing utilities information at LXRP on Toorak Road. And we created a quick Python script that basically looked through the data and where there was information, mapped it across to our parameters, i.e. what discipline is it from power, water, telco, and then if there's a size in there, a diameter. The existing data remains, so we didn't actually write anything. We just did some mapping and we didn't take ownership or responsibility for creating data or manually doing anything. And by default, it was all set to level D, so that the utilities team could then, in a digital sense, instead of paper-based, collaborate with the alliances to fix it. We then created a tool to enable them to actually start to integrate and add to this 2D digital twin initially over time, which then also had a 3D dimension. Now, what we're going to do as a closing point now is actually to show you a 1-minute snippet of a much larger video that's starting to show how you can democratize data on a project to traditionally those that don't have access via a web browser, founded on the Esri platform at this point, while ingesting BIM models. So I hope you enjoy, and hopefully the sound comes across On that note, I might just stop sharing just to make sure I've shared with sound. So just give me a second here. Let's make sure that's ticked, and I will do that again. So hopefully you can see my screen. I'm looking for a thumbs up. That's a thumbs up. All right, here we go. So next slide. Hopefully this works. All right.
You there, Ben? I think you're frozen. Rob, do you want to just close it out for Ben? I think
Thank you, Ben. I think we've lost him there. Yes, as I said, just to close it off, yeah, a lot of work's been undertaken over the last 18 months. Been a long journey to try to bring it all together. We continue to work on this concept and prototype, and we're enhancing it as we go on a regular basis, with the vision to have a digital twin built for 2-hour crowd, and ultimately for every project we do, and ultimately that will form the digital twin of the underground Victoria into the future. That's the vision we have. So with that, I'll say thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Truly great project on amazing scale. So no, well done. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I'll just remind people that if you just look for the Q&A tab below the photographs of us on the screen, you can lodge your questions for Rob and Ben. And now I'll hand over to Hashan, who's going to, so Hashan's the Manager of Virtual Business Information Systems, or VBIS. Hashan's experience spans new offerings development, business transformation, business and project management and engineering. He's led technology-based business transformation projects for Fortune 500 and large Australian companies. And more recently, he's been involved in asset management and delivering services and being involved in VBIS. So I'll hand over to you, Hashan, to explain what VBIS is and how it works.
Thank you, Greg. I'll just check you can hear me okay.
Loud and clear.
Excellent. So thanks for the opportunity and thanks for the time to go through VBIS today. So VBIS is a standard for asset classification and then helping converge asset information that sits in different disparate applications, but I'll obviously go through that explanation. Just some background of why the development took place. So I was really focusing on the role of information in asset management, and a few key industry trends and challenges that we focused on. So first one is the challenges, the trends, mostly technology related. And a few of the presentations obviously touched on this heavily, and the fact that there's a lot of digital engineering activities taking place in the construction phase, and there's a lot of information as a result coming into operations, and just seeing how best to leverage that through the entire life cycle of assets. The other aspect is, again, technology focused, looking at things like the bolt-on tech like analytics and AI and machine learning that Greg touched on. And, you know, it's been buzzwords in the industry for a long time, but it's getting quite practical to actually deploy and get some great benefits of it. But it is still dependent on one fundamental aspect, and that is the quality and the consistency of the baseline information that is fed into them. Because certainly in my past experiences, it can be somewhat rubbish in, rubbish out in some aspects if that quality and consistency of the baseline information isn't there. And as the slide here highlights, the other common challenges in that operations phase is aspects like there's multiple stakeholders, whether it's the asset owner, asset operator, multiple maintenance stakeholders. And if you don't have a consistent classification or a structure for the asset register and associated information dictated, it falls on the respective stakeholders. They fall on the best way that they think is, it should be done. But as a result, as you roll it up to the asset owner or the asset operator level, that consistency isn't there, right? Because everyone's gone down a forked path, basically. And the other aspect is, in practical terms, there's multiple applications in use to manage information in the operations phase. And that's largely down to the different types of information. So it is models, documents, database entries, financial records, and things like that. And they're generally disparate. So the VBIS also tackles how to bring it all together, and which is where the converging information part comes in. So hopefully that gives you a bit of sense of why and the development took place. So here's the how. The Victoria government funded the development. We formed a project consortium over a 2-year period to do the development, which is coming to an end now. And the classification structure will then fall on to BIM4Water as the custodianship, who's a not-for-profit, to then maintain this in the longer term using their existing processes, being a not-for-profit. A few other things that happened since then, as many presentations touched on, Victoria released the Victoria Digital Asset Strategy, and VBIS was endorsed and included in there for classification and linking data sets together. That was in March this year. And the Queensland government also did the same thing and released their data and information guideline, which then also has VBIS in it for, again, classification and system interoperability. A few other things we've done is we formed a strategic partnership with the BRIC initiative out of the US. So that's largely a IO dictionary and a semantic model to help standardizing analytics deployments and operational modeling and activities like that. Most recently picked up by Google for their digital buildings initiative. And in the conversations with them, they saw great value in how VBIS obviously goes into the depth of asset classification and how that links into the modeling that they're doing. So they've actually now included or integrated VBIS into their modeling, and that's been made available on their website. Other partnership is obviously with NBS that deploys Uniclass. So we have a close working relationship with NBS, and I'll touch on that again along with Uniclass as well, where we've been mapping the product codes into the VBIS structure. So I also want to just quickly cover the objectives of the development. So the classification structure and the VBIS tags are an open standard. This is not software, so we had to start saying it in bold and underline because people started thinking this was a software platform that you have to deploy and acts like a data lake or something like that. And this is done intentionally because we're very mindful in practical terms. There are commercial applications that are already being deployed and investments have been made. And instead we want VBIS to be a system agnostic development that then essentially promotes that consistency of asset information that already exists within those applications and then to help bring it together. We also want to facilitate the ease of information handover through key workflows. So whether it's the procurement process, where accuracy can lead to many efficiencies in terms of not ordering incorrect parts and things like that. The other big one is construction to operations handover. So again, vast amount of information and just making sure the end is mined in terms of what the operations team and the level of granularity of the different asset definitions and the information associated with that is defined upfront so that it can be gradually worked towards without adding more effort in that construction phase to do that, which in turn has benefits like making efficiencies in that mobilization phase and making better use of the information. Which of course, one aspect of that is BIM and FM. So we are seeking to make that an easier thing to accomplish. So BIM and FM has been a concept for a long time. We'd like to see better adoption in that sort of space or of that concept. And then VBIS facilitates better access to BIM models from the applications that operators in that operations phase are more comfortable using so that people can start to make better use of the information that's available in BIM models throughout the whole life cycle of the assets. At the end of the day, it's really about making things more efficient and optimizing costs of that operations phase so that better outcomes can be had. And the key thing here is it's by making better availability of information that already exists. So with those objectives in mind, what is VBIS? So VBIS is two key parts. First one is that classification structure and the VBIS tags. And the second part we call the search syntax. that deals with then converging that information that sits in different places. Going into a bit more detail of that first part, the classification structure. So we've developed a 4-level structure. First level is the discipline that the asset sits in, and level 2 to 4 then goes into the detail of defining out the various asset types, down to the level of granularity needed in that operations phase for key things like performance benchmarking, lifecycle planning, maintenance activity planning, and the like. So you can see a couple of examples there. That then rolls up to the VBIS tag that you can see in green in the middle. The tag is unique for each asset type. It's alphabetic. We put in industry common acronyms in there, like PTZ for pan, tilt, zoom cameras at the right level. And we've done that so that's human readable as possible, which then helps identify what the asset is just by looking at the VBIS tag. And the other aspect with it being human readable is the ability to do wildcard searching. So a quick example here is 2 different installations of pumps, but they're actually the same type of pump. So you can see the chilled water pump sits in a mechanical system. That's highlighted in the VBIS tag by ME at the start. The water pump sits in a hydraulic system. That's highlighted by the HY at the start. But I'll draw your attention to level 2 to 4. The rest of the VBIS tag is actually same for both assets because they're still the same type of pump. So they're both centrifugal axial split pumps, just happen to be in 2 different systems. So you can clearly have that articulated through the VBIS tag, which then helps you cut the data in different ways and do wildcard searches. So there's a few examples there at the bottom of the screen of how the wildcard searches could be done. So you can either search for all mechanical pumps or all centrifugal pumps or centrifugal pumps across various systems or by system, or, you get the idea. And I just wanted to show you how the VBIS tables look like. So this is a screenshot, excuse me, of the chiller section in the mechanical discipline. So first level is obviously mechanical, and level 2 to 4 is then defined on the left there, where you can see all the different chiller types laid out, and how that rolls into the unique VBIS tags in the middle. So I'll draw your attention to the VBIS tags right at the top there. There's different levels of VBIS tags where it can be 2 levels, 3 levels, or 4 levels, depending on the level of detail. And we've done that so that we're catering for the different level of information that's available throughout the life cycle of the asset, where at the concept design stage, you may not have settled on the exact type of chiller, for example, that's going to be installed, but you do know there's going to be a chiller in that sort of space that'll go in. So in that stage, you can gradually put the VBIS tags in and build it up. And at practical completion, you've got the full tag defined, which then allows the handoff information at the granularity needed for that operations team to then carry on doing their operational planning activities. I mentioned Uniclass and Omniclass before. So we've worked closely with those outputs and mapped them to the right levels in VBIS. So you can see it there for how that lays out for the chillers. And then the additional detail that's available there for the different types of chillers, for example. So if someone's already gone down the path of Uniclass, then this can sit alongside that and give the additional level of detail that the operations teams would appreciate. So, and this goes with the mantra of VBIS. It's all about working in with other classification schemas and providing that additional level of detail to then support those efficiency of activities. So hopefully that gives you a quick overview of that first part of VBIS. I'll go into the second part of VBIS now, the search syntax. So the premise here is what you can see on the screen. Information related to specific asset types normally sits in different applications due to the nature or the type of information. So you can see a few examples there on the screen. And at this point, you know what the information is because you've meta tagged it with the VBIS tag, but the user still needs to go and find that information that sits in different applications. So here's where the search syntax comes in to help the user actually go and look for that information by essentially making it possible by a couple of clicks without having to go in and log in and search for information and avoid that time-consuming process. So with VBIS, we like to keep things simple so that adoption isn't an issue. So again, with the classification, it's a tag, and with the search syntax, we've adopted a URL query, a URL string-based approach to pass information from one application to the other. And what we've done in the VBIS standard is to define the different parameters that make up that search string so that it can essentially be a common language between commercial applications to pass information. So by way of an example here, the user might be in a virtual tour or a 3D model. You walk into the plant room in the model, you're looking at the chiller, you want to find the documents associated with that. The user would click on a button that triggers the search syntax. So the example there on the screen, that search syntax basically saying, show me all the drawings related to this chiller installed in the project called project name. That passes into the document management system, which does its search and displays the documents for the user. So with the search string approach, you have the high confidence that it's always the latest information that's available, because there's always a search query going in. That way, if information on the other end is updated, it doesn't matter, because the latest information can always be searched and brought forward.
2 minutes, Heshan.
Thank you. And it's just obviously not about documents. You can extend it out to maintenance records, performance monitoring, analytics platforms, linking into the BIM model, or even searching for parts, where we work with different product vendors to get their product catalogs VBIS tagged. So like, for example, the Reese Group have tagged about 26,000 of their assets, which is actually searchable on their website by VBIS tag. And what that means is the two parts of VBIS then comes together with commercial applications to form that VBIS-enabled application ecosystem, where you know what the information is because it's VBIS tagged, and you can go and find it through the search syntax, and it all works together. And just in terms of support, the classification tables are available on our website. We run a VBIS-enabled partner program for software vendors to become members and then essentially adopt the VBIS classification and the search syntax, so that they become a Lego block in the end user's Lego model. And we also offer support services there to help with information planning or deployment, or putting in new software applications. Thank you very much. And I'll leave you with this picture here of a bit more of a practical example of that ecosystem that shows you the variety of information that can come together. And it's at the end of the day, it's about having the right information available for the people in the right time. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Heshan. I think a really valuable approach in addition to the management of data. Thank you. If you can stop sharing screen there, thank you.
Done.
Yeah, so we'll move now into the Q&A session. We've got a couple of questions up on the Q&A. If others want to add, there's a button just below the photo pictures there, which allows you to add your questions into the group, and I can ask them of the group. So please make use of that. Before we get into that, firstly, we've got a poll. And so if you use, I've put it in the chat bar, but essentially pollev.com/WSAA is the address or URL you want to use. If you put that into your smartphone, you'll see this question is, what do you see the key barriers to data sharing? I'll let you think about that, and we'll come back to that poll. And it's about sorting, so put it as highest priority at the top and then move things down, and that should come up live as we go. And in the chat, there's that address, pollev.com/WSAA, should enable you to enter the details. I'll start with you, Shane. We've got a question in the chat, I think it's for you, from Nazar, about what would you think the approach of public-private academic collaboration. So really it's about, how do you think you could integrate public, private and academic collaboration for your digital transformation, and what would be the role or the value add for each?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think in the past, we connect in with people that they would let us know what they're doing. They'd ask us for an opportunity. They'd probably want to try a technology or a different way of working. And I think what is great now is we've sort of gotten in the driver's seat, and we're starting to know or work out what it is that we want. So when we connect with the public or private sector, and they want to connect with us on an activity or come up with an outcome, we're much better placed now to figure out where that fits in. So I think that's a big part of what I want to do with the framework, because what I have seen in the past, it's been a little hit and miss with that sort of stuff, and the organisation hasn't been quite ready to accept things that are coming through and being presented to us. So I would say that yes, it definitely fits. There's definitely a role for that in the future. And I can definitely see that happening within my framework, especially when we get to a point where, you know, I've worked out exactly, you know, what it is that the organisation actually wants throughout that full life cycle. It's much easier to work with, you know, those sorts of sectors.
I agree. It's always much easier once you've got a plan to be able to communicate and engage. No, well done. I've had a few responses to the poll, and we've got a tie. So there's not much differentiating it. The key barriers to data sharing are around standards in the first instance, a bit of quality assurance as well, and then the costs, the education, and the data transfer protocols are sort of the third. And then appropriate nomenclature is not seen as the key barrier to data sharing, which is interesting given what you've said, Hashan. So I might throw to you, Hashan, with a question about then, well, what are the key basic building blocks for enabling cross-sector data sharing? And is this right or not? Or is this perception not quite right?
Yeah, interesting poll. So I think there's a few things there. First thing to me is consistency of the information, and the fact that it has to be easy to actually share in the first place. The process has to be simple. There has to be a level of high confidence in the information that is being shared, so that each individual is confident that the right information is coming through. And it also needs to be at the right level of granularity. So different stakeholders will need information at different levels, and it has to be at that right level for that individual user. So that has to be in consideration. And the ultimate thing there is it has to link back to the organizational objectives and what each stakeholder or the organization is actually willing to, you know, it's planning to do. And what are their core objectives? Because you can have information for the sake of information, and that could be, you know, you're going down a path where you don't want to go down. So it has to be, what do you need to achieve? What information is important? Where does it sit? The consistency and the quality of information, and then the ease of transfer or the ease of sharing of that information as a full, I suppose, the asset information model in that sort of sense to come together. And then making sure that is, you know, the ongoing maintenance and the upkeep, you know, it's either self-maintained or there's minimal effort needed to, you know, so that it's not a once in a, like a snapshot approach of data perfection, but then 6 months on the track, it's gone out of kilter.
No, it's good, a good process. Is that embedded in the VBIS documentation and the way you guys approach things?
Yeah, so with VBIS, it's really about keeping things as simple as possible so that that consistency can be adopted by stakeholders at different levels of maturity. So, you know, you might be at a place where there's not even asset register, or, you know, you have a good asset register, but then the information's all over the place. So it kind of accounts for that practical scenario where people are going to be at different levels of maturity so that you can start to bring it together. And ultimately, it's about developing a roadmap so that you have the end in mind, where, like we were saying, where that utopian position is, and a step-by-step milestone-based, you know, roadmap that takes you there gradually, which then aligns with your organizational objectives, your budget and resource requirements, and the like, so that you're taking bite-sized chunks, but you know you're going in the right direction, right? So VBIS tackles all of those common challenges that we've certainly seen in the sector around that sort of stuff in how we've developed it.
Oh, very powerful. Thanks. Yeah. I've got a question from the floor. If this is to either Ben or Robert, so not sure which one of you guys want to tackle it first, but what's been the value of visualization in community consultation around the LXRP project?
I'll have a crack first. Rob's pausing there. To be honest, we haven't harnessed the prospective value in that. And I'd actually say that the initial part that we're getting a lot of traction on would be the community consultation within the Victorian Public Service, where they're starting to see things in a different light and then starting to think about how they can use it to do exactly that externally. So I would suggest we don't have a knowledge of how that would look. I do have an example though that to date we have used third parties that have created visualizations or renders or market releases of stations and other things. Except the lights are starting to really turn on when they're saying, hang on, we can actually do this somewhat live, like when real-time rendering and Unity came to BIM. It's that same kind of realization and aha moment that I can see happening very soon. Any thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, to add to your point, a lot of it is all static and drawings. They are artist impression that are predominantly used, great, and they're all over the internet as well on the level crossing side. But when you start looking at it from a 3D perspective, just as you've seen, you can actually start taking people through, flying through the project and getting them a sense of how and what it feels to be around in that space. So there's definitely a lot of interest shown within LX, but there's very big perspective as well, and a lot of questions coming from within LX about how could we use this for community consultation. So that's happening as we speak as well. So there's lots of interest.
Oh, great. Yeah. Let's see how this pans out. I mean, just looking at the visuals there, it's pretty exciting. So it should be easy to engage the community, you'd expect. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. We might just break into our next poll. And so what we're looking at here is about how effectively is your organisation currently sharing data across sector to enable digital twin and other digital outcomes. So it's again at that pollev.com/WSAA. Are you not considering it yet? Have you actively considered but not started? Are you sharing with one other sector or more than one other sector? So if you pull that up on your phone, you'll be able to enter that in real time. So that, yeah. But while we're getting answers to that, a question for Shane, what have been some of the barriers to greater DE adoption at Sydney Water?
Yeah, I'd probably say two things. The first one would be the silos, silos of people, silos of teams, legacy structure of the teams. So, I guess if we're trying to implement digital engineering as a transformational piece, we're not trying to just do it in a little splash in one area. We're trying to do it as a team, and all of us have talked about the importance of doing that today. So I think that probably has been a challenge. It's a challenge that we're overcoming, though. I guess we have had a restructure recently and a new strategy, and there's custodian roles that actually go across the business now, rather than up and down. So I think that's really going to help us. It's definitely going to help me with my implementation. So that's probably a big one. The other one is probably benefits. So what am I going to get out of it? Before I got to Sydney Water, that they tried to implement digital engineering a few times, and it was not really successful, or it might have been successful in a patch. And what I'm really trying to do at the moment, as I presented, is look at that from give that a wider lens, and actually work out what those benefits are with the people, so that we can actually have an aligned vision. So that they would be the couple of things I would say that were the main contributors to maybe things not going as nicely as they should.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. And if we looked in at the poll, there's no one not yet considering, but most are actively considering, but they haven't started yet. There's one or two that have started sharing with at least one other sector, and again, a similar number that have started sharing with more than one sector. So there's a bit more sharing starting to happen, which is great to see. I'll close that. And then there's a question from Christian to the panel as a whole, and whoever wants to tackle it first can unmute first. But how close are we to integrating real-time monitoring information into 2D and 3D BIM models for practical use? A tricky one. Who wants to tackle that?
I'll have a go.
Yeah, sure, Shane.
So at Sydney Water, we're already connecting to real-time data. We're doing that with the IoT and smart meters, and coming back to some of our more legacy systems that we've got now. So what we're looking at doing is how do we actually start to connect that back to BIM models, as you said. So so there's a standardization piece happening at the moment. So we're heading very rapidly towards what was just asked then. How long? I don't know, within within the next year. I want to see some action because, you know, I guess I want the implementation for Sydney Water to be something that's real and it impacts right across that life cycle. I actually live in the operational technology team, so it's of real interest to me to show some results in there. So from our perspective, yeah, it'll be happening soon.
That's great to hear. Anyone else?
Can I just add to that, Greg? Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple of examples. So in one of the deployments, we linked the 3D model to analytics outputs. So that's having, and that really plays into that second part of what VBIS offers, which is that search syntax, converging different information that sits in different applications together. And the other one I wanted to highlight was we're working with a large national commercial property portfolio entity that they're going through their operational technology digital transformation process, and we're linking together their portfolio system with a AI-based system that's looking at controlling the building automation space. So it's like the real-time control application. And then there's a third application that is then monitoring the output or the results of that in real time. And in discussions now of how VBIS will then bring that consistency that we discussed a little earlier between the three applications, so that you're looking at the right thing in each application and then passing information in a consistent way so that that integration can take place and basically leverage the best bits of each application, right? But as far as the user is concerned, it's all talking together and it's all working accurately, and you have that high confidence that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it'd be great to see. That's good. Yeah. Ben or Robert, or you happy to leave that one?
Well, just briefly, we have some connected site-related projects as part of the R&D team, but they're not necessarily centralized around design and the like. Although the technology's there, from our perspective, a lot of it has been theoretically possible, but we haven't been given the remit or tried to connect it. And I'm sure the devil's in the detail, which Shane and no doubt Hesham has come across.
Oh, great. All right. A question. So if you've got any questions amongst the participants, if you want to just lodge that in the Q&A, let us know. We've got time for one or two more. I might just throw to Robert, just if you want to say, well, what do you see to some of, if we talked about trust in data, what do you see as some of the barriers to establishing trust in data?
I think it was touched on before. It's to do with decision making. So it's more crap in, crap out. So and you need to build that over time. And I think one of the key things is, yeah, we all talk about common data structures and schemas and the platform, but ultimately it all gets fed with data. So I think one of the biggest things we need to do is start small, start simple, start building the data from a very simple platform and putting it all together so it can make sense, so it can get analyzed and provide some really useful insights to make decisions. Because ultimately, if we look at all this, why do we need data? Data is required there because we need to make decisions. So, and that needs to go all the way up the chain, and we need to get everybody to trust the data that's going in and what they're actually seeing in front of them. So we really need to work hard on getting, starting simple, making it transparent as well, being very honest and allowing people to see what is happening along the way, because along the way people would question where the data is coming from. So there needs to be some level of transparency. And then when we get highlights, when we get wins, we need to highlight it and celebrate it and show people what decisions are being made using that data, because that will build the trust into that data. And then I think finally also is to provide education right at the end, so people can start being aware and ultimately start getting engaged and more involved in starting to input, because we depend on all the people around us to also provide the data and build the data into that system, where it ultimately starts from a very small point to a bigger point to a much more bigger point, and then ultimately we can make those decisions using all those analytics and data and linking it all to all those 3D models and BIM and the like. So that's kind of my view on how we start looking at trusting the data.
That's good. Sort of building a virtuous circle. We build it, gradually improve it, and increment and improve.
Yeah.
No, excellent. I've got one last poll. If people wanted, this is a word, also we build up a word wall. But really, what is you as the audience? What do you see as the greatest benefit from data sharing across sector? Is there any value in it at all? Why would we do it? Is it just the efficiency? Is it how do we? It's the things we can do. So you can type anything in there and then it'll start to appear and build on itself. And then I'll throw to a final question for the panelists and then head back to Adam to close us out. But I'll leave that one there. Learning from our mistakes, yes. One of the key things. With greater transparency, yeah. I'd also add to that one version of the truth. That would be very helpful. Right data at the right time. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So a lot of that consistency. Yeah. If we, as has been said, garbage in, garbage out. So it's fundamental to collaboration. Yeah. All right. Thanks for that. And our final question then for the panelists, or just to close out, really, if we go through Shane, Ben, Rob, and then Hashan, really, what do you see as the future for optimal data sharing? What's your vision of the future? How do you see success? What could we achieve here? So if I start with you, Shane.
Okay, yep. So I think, like, I just picture a smart world, you know, a smart connected world where, you know, we're a lot of things are automated and, you know, we're getting efficiencies. And I guess, you know, selfishly from a water perspective, you know, I'd really love to see us optimize the way we work across that full life cycle. And I'd like to see us, you know, get that added value for the customers. The customers are at the forefront for us. So, so for me, that's sort of the target for where, you know, all this is heading for us. And I think the, you know, optimizing the way we share information, the way we produce information, the information we display for customers, you know, is going to be absolutely key to this whole thing.
Yeah, great. Ben?
Just like my kids currently can't believe that a phone didn't exist back in the day. I'd love a lot of these things that we're chatting about now to be not even discussed. They're just a given. Just like with our phones and other things we take for granted, we should, when it comes to the whole construction industry, see it as together building a society, removing level crossings, optimizing and maintaining and growing our water network. But it all goes into a digital twin, and we don't waste so much, but we build on what we've got to make a more sustainable, more economical future with transparency and ability to optimize it through data and integrity of that data.
Yeah, great vision. Thanks, Ben. Rob?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we need to start small, as I said before, build it up, and also try to get small wins. The more wins we get, the more people are encouraged to contribute and build it without trying to boil the ocean. If we try to look at, you know, building, you know, for example, Melbourne, you're not going to build Melbourne or digital twin of Melbourne. You're going to build a one house at a time. So I think we need to take that concept and start looking at it, you know, one component at a time, and ultimately over time, we will see things growing and becoming much more, just like any technologies we've seen. The iPhone, you know, started off with iPhone 1 with one app or 5 apps, and now we have hundreds and hundreds of apps. And it's the same concept. We just need to really keep working at it, and we will see things coming to life into the future.
That's great. Yep. Start small and slowly build it up. Right. Hashan?
Yeah, I think I would echo that comment. Basically, is to let's leverage what we've got already and make maximum use out of it. Whether it's, you know, existing information, existing applications, and the like, by, you know, having better collaboration, not just between the people that use it, but also between the applications in terms of common integrations and the like. And then have a roadmap approach that works towards continuous improvement, right? So, which you can gradually build on based on what you've got to say, you know, here's the level of integration we've got today. let's build, let's look for improvements on that and build the next step, and gradually work towards it. So that we have, I suppose, a practical spin on things, so that it is all achievable and it is possible as well.
No, it's good. So yeah, encouraging people to sort of use bite-sized chunks, slowly grow, develop. We can do amazing things. We don't have to do it all tomorrow. Let's slowly build something that's really amazing and it's fully integrated up and down the supply chain. So thanks everyone. Thank you very much for being on this panel, and thank you as well to being participants in the audience. I'll hand back to you, Adam, for some closing words.
Greg, thanks so much for facilitating that session. I enjoyed it immensely. I am a geek when it comes to good solid infrastructure, visualization and data and everything digital. So Shane and Hashan and Ben and Robert, thanks so much for joining us. That was a great conversation. For our audience, again, still some more sessions to go. We're almost at the end of Digital Twin Week. Another great conversation tonight. And then tomorrow, our workshop, as I mentioned, around a regional digital twin strategy. Again, for those that are interested, the Digital Twin Challenge, we're looking for 5 local councils. We're also looking for 5 infrastructure development, similar type of use cases or case studies that we can go on a journey with to build some model templates and learn and share. So head to the Digital Twin Hub to check that out. For those that may be part of the broader Smart Cities community, our Smart Cities Awards were launched yesterday. About 2 weeks to go until round 1 submissions closed. Head to scwaustralia.com for the Smart Cities Week website information there. That's about it. Again, Greg, team, thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks again.
Not a problem. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.